Cool. All right. Well, let's see. Welcome to October America's Adobe Analytics Champion Office Hours. Excited to see everybody. Hopefully we can help answer some questions real time. We can kick it off with intros. I can start us off. My name is Megan Powers. I am a now 4-time Adobe Analytics champ. I work at CarMax, where I lead a team of developers and analysts, and we are responsible for capturing all of CarMax's digital data across all of our digital properties. And we are obviously heavy users, but also heavy target and launch users as well. I'll kick it over to Jen.
All right. I'm Jen Dungan. I am a 6-time champ. I am the optimization manager analytics at Torstar, which is a publishing company. We basically just use Adobe Analytics from the Adobe structure, but I also handle our Google Analytics and Marfiel. So yeah, if you ever need comparative analytics, I can probably get you there. I guess I'll pass it off to Anita, who's next in my list.
Okay, I'm Anita Mummert. I'm a senior consultant for BlastX Consulting. But I've been using Adobe Analytics for many, many years, and pretty extensively with CJA for the past 3 years. So I enjoy using both of those tools. I really love CJA. So if you have questions about that, I'm happy to help answer those. But I live in Raleigh, just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, and I have worked with all kinds of different industries: healthcare, government, automotive, publishing, retail, lots of different things. So I'm super excited about today, and hopefully we'll get some good questions. And then I will pass it over to Josh next.
And I'm Josh Stevens. This is my first office hour, so it's nice to be here. I actually am starting a new position with a new organization. So I am a lead strategic consultant CJA with AdSwerve. So love CJA. I've been in CJA for about the last 3 years or so, and then Adobe Analytics for a few years before that. And like Anita said, I love CJA. It's got a lot of flexibility and power, and so definitely excited to be here. I do need to drop at the half hour, but happy to be here.
Awesome. And Anita, you're pretty close to me. I'm in Richmond, Virginia, so there's not too many of us.
Oh yeah, that's just a couple hours.
Yeah,
that's right. Love it.
Awesome. Well, let's see. We have some questions in the workspace here, but I think since there's a live question in the chat, we could start with that one from Holly. So I'll read that out. Says, hello, I have a question. I'm trying to compare the results of my data warehouse report with Workspace. Everything is lining up except for average time on site. Is there any trick to calculate that in data warehouse or no? Because hit timestamps aren't available. I believe they're not in our report suite, at least.
Well, yeah, I'm going to say average time on site is always kind of fiddly to begin with, since it's all calculated. Yeah, so this one is a hard one. I didn't even realize you could get average time on site out through the data warehouse, to be honest. Most calculated metrics aren't available there. But trying to calculate the data is... maybe you're getting total time and you're just dividing it by the number of pages, I'm assuming. Maybe you can clarify more in the questions as we try to answer it. But yeah, time spent is like, depending on which segments are being applied or different logics, it can get like a little dicey on accuracy. The way I treat average time on site is I don't look for 100% accurate. I look for, is my trend, kind of falling near the same? Like, is my average going up? Is it going down? Is it staying constant? Based on, seasonality potentially, or what happens to be going on in the news. but I don't necessarily look for this is the actual average time because I just don't trust it. The last page of the visit, single page visits never have a time associated to them anyway. So it's dicey because you're losing a lot of that traffic. And if you have a lot of one and dones, that could mean like 50% of your time is lost, not being able to be calculated. It might mean that 30% lost. It might mean 75% is lost, all depending on the nature of your site. So that is one thing that I always am concerned about when it comes to average time. Maybe one of the others want to jump in with your thoughts on average time.
No, I totally agree with what you said. The only thing I could think of is that calculating it, I'm not sure in data warehouse if you could get I think it's total seconds or something like that, or time spent. I forget. I'm not looking at it right now. So you might be able to do, like Jennifer was saying, use that and divide it by what? I don't know. You might, it may be something that has to be done like outside of, this, whatever, you might have to do it on a spreadsheet or something. But because total seconds divided by pages, maybe.
But even still, you'd have to take out those last pages. Like you'd have to, like pages that end up being an exit that have no end time associated to them. You don't want those in your calculation because all the times are going to get lower. It's kind of a nightmare.
Wow, that was a tricky.
I just copy and pasted without much vetting, so we can do that live. But what AI says, but I was going to suggest the fifth thing that AI said is we use a report builder to calculate something like that. It's like an Excel plugin. If you haven't used that before, that you can get data straight out of Adobe from. You could schedule it like data warehouse and do calculations within the Excel sheet. But I think my thought goes to something like what the other folks have been suggesting, is try to get something like, accept it won't be perfect, but and call that out as caveats in your data, but try to do something like, total seconds for every visit, add those up, divide them by visits or something like that.
Yeah. The report builder idea is probably pretty good because it uses the same API it should be using the same API, or at least a similar API to what is building your workspace reports.
That's what I was thinking too. It's the same processed level of data versus data warehouse, which is not processed.
Oh no, data warehouse is processed, but it's calculated out in a different way to basically give you a flat form table, which is always a little odd because your visits don't deduplicate. Raw data, you can technically do it with raw data and lots of SQL, but again, that one is the unprocessed data. You got to make sure to get your excludes. You got to make sure to do this. You got to make sure to do that. You got to calculate all the timestamps for page A to page B. It can be nasty. Ask any of my data team. They will tell you the same thing. They don't like doing it.
Hopefully that helps Holly get you some ideas to at least get started. I would just probably agree internally on what definition you want to use. I get very few times is any web data completely accurate because of cookies and caching and all that stuff, right? And different devices and browsers. So, I would establish a definition that's accepted within your organization and monitor trends and compare versus having an absolute number that everyone agrees is penny perfect. Okay.
All right.
All righty. Let's see. So we can go to some of these questions, but we will, prioritize any of the ones like from the chat live if people have those. So please drop them in as you get them, and we'll come back and address them. So let's see. Someone asked, how can I identify traffic from AI sources? This is a hot topic lately. This is a segment that I use. I think different people have different variations in it on as well. So I have a hit level segment with different referrer types. And I got a lot of these from research and stuff like that, but also Adobe has just come out with a referrer type that's conversational AI as of a few weeks ago, I think. So I had already kind of set this up, and then I just added, when it came out, this referrer type to conversational AI.
If I'm not mistaken, the label was added a few weeks ago, but the data is going to start processing in 2 days from now.
Okay, good. So right now it's just my sig, which is fine.
We have a comment. Can we zoom in the report a little bit? It's a little hard to see. Thank you. I hope that's better, Doug, and everyone else on the call. All right, we got a thumbs up. Yeah, so I just wanted to add to Megan's, setting up your own referrers using Adobe's conversational AI referrer type when it comes through, all good. One of the points that Megan had actually had was anything that ends with a .ai. Now, most of us are probably going to be fine. However, Antigua actually owns the .ai domain. So if you're in the Caribbean, or maybe you have like an immigration website that might be getting a lot of traffic from the Caribbean and those official Antigua websites, you might want to be very careful about using anything that ends in .ai, because you might be, processing something that you don't expect as an AI conversational bot. So just a heads up. It was just a point I wanted to make. Anyone who, because we have to take into account where you are in the world and what kind of traffic you are driving.
Brian also posted a blog on the Adobe site, and I'll put the link here in the chat in a few minutes. But he very thorough blog and walked through some of the different types of AI traffic. For example, you can have traffic that's training a model. You can have traffic that is in response to a user inquiry, or you can have traffic where a user actually clicked on a link. And so in those cases, it would be refer, but in some of the others, it would actually be set as a query stream parameter, or actually user agent that you can look at. So I'll drop a link to that blog in the chat.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, we're kind of wrestling with those questions, right? It's like, what do we allow in? First of all, just to even hit our site, what if allowed in, then what do we want to count as part of our traffic? Is it customer traffic? This is more of a theoretical question. Is it customer traffic if it comes from a AI bot that's being prompted by a customer and returning results back to a customer? Or is it still non-human traffic that we don't want mixed in with our customer data? So yeah, those are active discussions. I would love to hear anyone else's opinion, but yeah.
We just have I think there's a follow-up. Is this for CJA or for AA2? Technically, it should work for both.
Except we don't get referrer type and CJA out of the box.
You're right.
So
yes. Yeah. You would have to
create
your own referrer type.
We'd have to make your own. Yeah. I was kind of disappointed. I was excited to see it, and then I remembered, oh crap, we can't use that for CJA.
That's very true. Yeah, and I just want to also say, if you're looking at the difference between, say, real traffic coming from AI versus AI itself, I would expect that AI that's crawling your site, trying to grab content, that might actually be captured in the domain dimension. There is a domain that will capture ISPs. So, here in Canada, I'll see a lot of stuff from Bell. I'll see a lot of stuff from Rogers. We have a lot of US traffic. So I'll see, known providers down there like T-Mobile and Sprint and whatever. But I would expect that if it's an actual AI bot that is crawling your site and not a real person, that you might actually see it's a ChatGPT or OpenAI or one of those actual servers being identified as a domain. And domain is something, at least in AA, that's out of the box. Anita or Josh, who have more CJA experience, might be able to say whether or not they have access to that. But
yeah, most of the implementations I've seen do have access to it, but there have been some that do not in CJ.
Any other AI questions or from the attendees or champions?
just
Alrighty.
AI is going to ruin us all.
I know. We could go on and on about that, but
We'd like to know more how much AI is stealing traffic from us by giving synopsis of our articles and then people not coming through to read them.
Oh, yeah.
That's, interesting. Okay, let's see. Is what impact does using within or after have on my segments? Okay, so I put a couple notes. Within is everything that happens before an endpoint. So you provide that end or cutoff point. After is only the stuff that happens after the beginning point. So you provide that point for your segments. Applying those should reduce, in theory, traffic in your segment because you're making it more granular and more specific. Yeah.
And basically, I just said, basically what Megan said, it's about giving more specificity to your segment. And some practical examples might be wanting to find visits that came from a marketing email and then within that same visit made a purchase. So you would want to say, okay, this visit technically is all visit, but maybe you want a visitors that came to your site and within the same visit, made a purchase, but you want all the traffic for that visitor. Or maybe you want visitors that added something to their cart, but only made a purchase after getting a cart abandonment email, or, so you want to add that additional specificity to try and drive more complex logic.
Yeah. Yeah, we have an example. Go ahead, Jen, finish your thought.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, one example that came by me recently was someone was looking for hit page A and then exited the site, but not if it was page A, page B, and then exited the site. They wanted direct exits off of page A. So again, that's where you might say within, one page view, excluding any other page exists. So that's getting extra logic-y and putting in excludes into your within and after logics.
Yeah, we have an example where our homepage, like many companies, right, is dynamic. If you're a brand new visitor, you see one experience. If you're a return visitor and you've looked at cars, certain cars before, we'll surface those to you on the homepage, what you've looked at, the searches you've done, recommend cars that you might like based on the cars you've looked at. So we have, the very simple segment that uses after and you can, combine these two, but do you look at a homepage and then look at cars and then look at a homepage again, but only after you've seen a car page, for example, stuff like that, or after you saw the homepage one time. We have various versions of that, but lots and lots of different use cases for after and within.
And like anything, when you're building a segment, I always recommend don't try to build a big, long, complex segment all at once. Build it in small pieces. Check little bits of logic to make sure that what you have built makes sense. You compared it, and then just keep building upon that to get to where you need to go. Because if you try to build it all at once, you might get back numbers and you might go, great, I got numbers. And then 6 months later, you go, oops. And then you got to go back and recalculate all those months of data for your business because you're like, I had a little problem in that segment and all those numbers are invalid. Like it always pays to double check if you've got a QA environment, sometimes even running through a couple of scenarios on incognito mode, capturing what your, a specific user ID and following that through and go, did that come in my segment the way I expected it to? Was it excluded from the segment the way I expected it to? Again, it never hurts to be cautious when you're doing something complex.
Yeah, we often use our dev report suite in Adobe Analytics, and I'll stick a UTM parameter on my URL and then make sure that comes into the dev report suite in, like Jen said, in the segment I want it to and not in the segment I don't want it to. Yeah. And it, like Jen said, testing out like each container at a time is good, because just like if you're doing an A/B test, right? If you do too many things and you don't get the data you're looking for, you don't know which part of it is the problem. So it's a good suggestion.
Yep.
One thing I might want to add to that within and after is you can use within to look for quick actions or quick behaviors, and then after for people or situations that are longer to convert. So just some use cases that could be applicable.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion too. Yep.
It is.
Any questions from the audience for this one? Other comments from champs?
Not seeing any questions come through, so hopefully we covered it. Or maybe people, if they have follow-ups, by all means, you can reach out to us afterwards.
Okay. Alrighty. Go down to this one. Let's see. So this is something I added based on some questions I've gotten internally recently, so I thought it might be good to cover here. Years ago, like probably when we first turned Adobe on, I created a custom bounce rate because I don't love Adobe's out-of-the-box bounce rate. Adobe's out-of-the-box one is hit-based, which means that if you hit a page and then click, you're counted as a bounce. But click doesn't mean just click. Click can mean any other server call that comes after your page load. So that could be the next page, which wouldn't be a bounce, right? So that's legit. It could, but sometimes you want to track clicks that are on the page that don't actually go anywhere. And according to your company's definition, that might not be a bounce. Or, sometimes we have an asynchronous call that will fire after the initial page load to indicate like the page state or just some other information we didn't know of at the time that the page loaded. And that is also considered a hit. But if the customer only sees that first page and they get an asynchronous call, Adobe does not count them as a bounce, but I would want to count that as a bounce. So I've created this custom bounce rate that's single page visits divided by entries. You may have your own definition at your own company, but this is a much more accurate depiction for us of what I think of as a traditional bounce, which is a customer hitting a page, not engaging on any other page in your site, and bouncing. So, and then Jen.
Yeah, we have the exact same definition as you, which I've also had set up for years. And again, for us, there are potential engagements on the pages that for us don't count as negating a bounce, like things like an exit intent overlay. Like you come to the page, you go to hit back or close your browser, your mouse scrolls up to near the top. This overlay shows up. We have to track that, it showed up because we want to track engagement on that, if people click through or didn't click through, but it's not an engaged visit for us. Like we definitely want to still count the bounce because it was one page view and they left. Now, again, there is a difference between maybe like a bounce, which is a single page view and then leave, or an engaged bounce, or an like an engaged visit. Like maybe you want to treat those single page visits with some engagement as not a bounce because somebody engaged with your site. Like, I don't know, Megan having a car site, maybe somebody came to the the calculate the cost of this car, and they engaged with the form and got a price out at the end, and they only hit one page. It would still count as a bounce, but it was an engaged visit. So again, there's different metrics that you have to try and play with. And so you know your sites better than we know your sites. We know our sites better than, you guys know our sites. So always try to think about what makes sense for your business, for your site, and then try to stick with some kind of definition. So again, we don't use the out of the box bounce rate. We use the custom bounce rate. And that was something that we agreed as an organization many years ago. But that doesn't mean that you can't use it. If it makes sense to you that one hit is a bounce, by all means use it. Like, we're not going to tell you it's wrong because it may not be wrong for your business. So
That's right.
Jen, I'm curious if you guys measure visitors that scroll a certain length on the page and look at that as an engagement, even if they only hit one page.
We do. We actually use a different tool for it, though. So before this year, we were on Parsley, which we had scroll tracking built into custom scroll tracking. And now we have Marfeel, which has their own kind of like scroll tracking built into it. It actually has an overlay that says, 50% of users scroll to this part of the page and so you can kind of see where people are scrolling to at a per page level. And so because editorial is more concerned about scrolling, who's reading their stories, and Marfeel and Parsley are both more editorial analytics tools, they tend to use that. So I don't have to build in a whole bunch of custom logic into Adobe and send off a whole bunch of extra server calls for tracking scrolls, or try to track the last scroll percentage, that somebody hit on every page and averaging that. I mean, it's absolutely possible to do that. But yeah, we just haven't bothered doing it in Adobe since we have other tools that kind of do it for us.
Yeah, we, Josh, he left. Okay. I'm going to ask if he had anything else to add before he left. Yeah, we similarly use a different tool for scroll depth tracking because it would eat up a lot of different server calls trying to track scroll depth, on various pages. But we have lots of research articles about vehicles, similar to Jen does, lots of articles and lengthy pages. So we wanted to be able to track and see if there was because there's a difference in my mind between someone who hits a page, goes, nope, not for me, backs right out, versus someone who hits a page, reads the whole article, gets what they need, and leaves. So both of those would show up as a bounce in either definition, Adobe's or my custom one. But we also fire a scroll event. To save on server calls, we just fire it, just the first page of the first visit for a customer. Once per visit, just on the first page they hit. Just to is that customer engaged? Are they scrolling or not? And again, you could make those rules at your own business based on your business needs, but that has been helpful for our content team in particular to know which articles are true, visits or true bounces to those articles versus which ones are engaging. So.
Yeah, things get really complicated with more complicated sites. And then for us with walls, it gets even more complicated because there's bounces on real articles. Like they read a real article and leave. They don't read the article and leave, or they hit an article, get the wall, and then they leave.
Right. Yep. And I assume you track all that to some degree.
We like I said, we have scroll tracking that does other stuff, but every page that somebody comes to, I track whether it was a wall or not, whether somebody was, a subscriber, whether they're logged in. Like I have all those metrics, and my implementation is kind of crazy because we didn't want to send all of those as separate server calls. Like I didn't want a page view
Right.
and then a wall as a separate server call. So
Right.
I actually have stitching that puts all and make sure that the page view has like every piece of information that we need, whether it was a wall and whether the user was a subscriber, and whether they were logged in, and which makes my life fun. I'll say it.
I may want to talk to you about, Jen, do you fire separate, you said not separate server calls for all those? It's all on the page?
It's all in one.
Okay, interesting. I may talk to you offline about that, to try to, because a lot of times we have to fire something async, but just because as the page loads, it doesn't, like if it uses an API, it doesn't have information about that whatever thing yet, like the status of something.
Same. We actually have our walls are actually fairly slow. I had to create some custom code to actually go basically check every 300 milliseconds for, do I have wall information yet? No. Do I have wall information yet? No. Do I have? Yes, I've got wall information. Grab it and then trigger the page tracking.
Okay.
It's like I said, it's a little bit of a can of worms, but and it was kind of this balance between, do you send the page view as soon as possible, or do you wait until you have the information and potentially lose people? We said no, we'd rather save on server calls, so we wait. Normally, it happens fairly quickly, but if the server is slow, then it could have delays.
Yeah. Does that mess up your marketing channel attribution at all? Because sometimes when we've tried to do that, it has messed up.
No, I haven't had a problem with that. But we can chat. And anyone who's interested, feel free to reach out to me on Experience League or LinkedIn. I'd happily go over my crazy solutions with you. But or if you just have insomnia, I'll go over it, put you right to sleep.
Awesome.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
Anita, anything to add there?
No, I just was Jen's idea about like putting everything in one server call. In a previous life, when I was working in publishing, we actually used the product streak to send multiple values not for scroll tracking. We did it for video, the milestones. This was before like the heartbeat tracking was weird and wasn't working, and there was something strange about that. So we used the product string because we didn't use it. We weren't a retail, organization, so we didn't use it for anything else. We didn't track revenue or anything like that. So that was how we kind of got around having to submit multiple hits for every single thing that happens on a page. So in fact, we started doing that with a lot of our events. Like all the different kinds of events that can happen on a single page, just to save on server calls. Don't tell Adobe, but we were doing it.
Oh, we do that, and I tell them all the time.
Oh, good.
Yep.
We use S products. We use S products for like 20 different things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah. Well,
I always like to suggest that because server calls are a pain. I mean, that's an issue that you really have to think about when you do want to track a lot of things, but unless you want to pay through the nose for it, you have to come up with some creative solutions, and that's what that is. So.
Yeah. And also S products, because you've got the merchandising, EVARs, and events,
Sure.
You can have different values associated to each item, as opposed to have one event for impression of this and one event for impression of that, but they're not like cross coupled, or
right.
Maybe you have like 3 elements of something on a page. You can actually say, well, I got 3 impressions of this and only 1 impression of this element. Like there's lots of creative solutions you can use those for.
Yep, sure can. Right.
All right.
What else?
Let's see.
Well, still no questions, but maybe we could talk about, like I said, the one before this meeting started, questions that come up, fairly frequently for people, and just came up again recently in Experience League for me, was about EVARs and unspecified. And people tend to get very confused about, why do I have so much unspecified traffic? And what normally happens with an EVAR is, again, because it's got attribution, it carries its value forward until it either expires or gets overwritten. But any hits before it gets set are going to come through as unspecified. So one of the things I like to use as an example for EVARs is something like tracking an internal campaign. You come to the homepage. You haven't hit any internal campaigns yet. Then you hit maybe page 1, and there's a banner built into your site that has, hey, check out this item for sale, or check out this art, or check out something. And you click on that, and that has an internal campaign on it. So when you land on the next page, you haven't come externally, so you're not coming from a marketing channel, but you track that internal campaign into your EVAR. So let's just say it's tracked as X. And that EVAR, that internal EVAR, now has a visit level attribution that will follow you through the site until you maybe make a purchase or a conversion. Maybe it's a sign up for a newsletter, or do something, whatever your conversion point is. But that will carry through until you get to the conversion. Now, when you look at your report and you're looking at your merchandising, or not merchandising EVAR, sorry, just your EVAR, you'll have a bunch of unspecifieds for anyone who either didn't interact with that campaign, that internal campaign, or any of the pages that happened before they did the campaign. And that doesn't mean that there's a problem with the tracking. It just means those are the pages that didn't have a campaign. And you can feel safe to, depending on the use, you might want to do the filter and say, don't include unspecifieds, where, Megan, if you hover over a product in the screenshot and you hit the little funnel icon, right there. Yeah. There is an include unspecified. You can uncheck that. So if it doesn't make any sense to show that in your report, don't just uncheck it. But if it does make sense, like if you want to know total number of conversions or orders or signups for newsletter, or whatever your conversion point is, you might want to see, well, X of these conversions came from not an internal promo, and Y of them came from that internal promo, or maybe a multiple internal promos going. So unspecified on its own, definitely not a problem. But of course, depending on what you're using it for, if you expect it to be set on every value, it might be. Like, as somebody mentioned, like was messaging back and forth with me, they're using an EVAR to track their ECID. And they had a bunch of, actually like 25 page views that didn't have it, but they had a whole bunch of occurrences. That could be coming from your mobile app lifecycle metrics, where you haven't actually set an ECID. It could be you didn't set it on your actions, but you set it on your page views, and your actions are happening before your page view occurs. Or maybe just something isn't being set correctly at all. So again, you have to take it with a grain of salt, know your implementation, know what you're expecting, and then make that determination about whether or not it's realistic or not. And sometimes you may have to do some investigations. So, Megan, Anita, have anything to add on the EVAR?
No, I just typically explain to people, because that's the question we constantly get. It's like, why are so many of my pages, why do I not have product name on all of my pages? And I say, well, think about it. Does your homepage have product names on it? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But, it's just, in the simplest explanation that I use is just that these unspecified are just events where that thing wasn't captured for whatever reason. Maybe it wasn't there because it's not supposed to be there. Maybe it's maybe there's something wrong and it should have been captured, but you know, a lot of 9 times out of 10, it's just something, just take it out of the table because it's gonna raise more questions than answer them. So the only reason you need it is to get totals, because when you take that out, it changes the totals for the column. But you know, it's definitely one of those things I've had to explain over and over and over again since the beginning.
And you'll still be.
And it doesn't change with CJA either.
Yeah. He'll be explaining it until the end of time.
Yes. But usually I'm like, don't worry about it. It's not, you know, mean that something's wrong. It just means that there are pages where there are events on your site that don't have this value, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Most cases.
Yeah. Like similar, like article titles. Not every page is an article. Not every page is going to have an article title. I'm fully expecting to have unspecified, which is again why if I'm doing like an article title, you know, report table, I will just uncheck it because they only care. They don't care about the home page, the section pages, the search pages, whatever other pages are on our site that are not articles.
Yep.
And of course, thinking about like visit expiration too brings me up the other question I get so often is like, why is it when I break this section down by page name, which is like a visit scoped EVAR, why do I see other pages that don't belong in this section? So it's like kind of the same sort of, you know, I liked your explanation about like, these are the things that happened before the user got here. So that's a good way to kind of think about it as well.
Yeah. And also, well, since you brought it up, don't be afraid to change your EVAR attribution to hit if that makes sense. Like article title, I definitely do not have that with any attribution other than hit because it does not make sense to have it on the next page. Now, maybe we want to see orders that were driven like the last touch article, but I can do that with the last touch attribution through custom attribution modeling. I can take my order, say last touch, put the article title, and then it will tell me the last touched article. And I will still sometimes have unspecified, which I get questions about all the time, like, why is that? And I'm like, because somebody probably came in through a marketing email. They went straight to the shop page, they purchased, therefore there was no last touch article within this visit. That's why you change it to sometimes to, well, let's look at the last touched article in the last 30 days. It changes the numbers around a bit. But yes, like there's also make sure that your EVARs have the correct scope for the purpose they are trying to achieve. Otherwise it gets complicated.
Yeah. And don't change it in the middle of a month if you can avoid it, because that causes all kinds of. I had an experience where I was like, no, these things don't need to, and it was an automotive site. So we had vehicles, you know, like the vehicle attributes, like, you know, the color, the model, the make, the trim level, those kinds of things. And they were all visit scoped. And I thought, well, these really, and they didn't do e-commerce on there. So I thought, well, why are you making all these visit scopes? You really need to have hit scoped EVARs for these. And so we did that. And then what happened was it took those vehicles off of the pages where they didn't belong, you know? So when we're looking at reports, we were seeing vehicles on, I can't remember what kind of page it was, but it was a page that had no vehicles on it. So suddenly leadership at this company was like, we're not seeing vehicles on this page anymore. And I wanted to say, well, you're not supposed to. They were not supposed to be there to begin with. But we actually wound up having to change it back because they wanted it. They were used to seeing it there, and that's how.
Oh no! So basically, carrying forward a bad implementation because they. Now the other thing is, like, if you do decide to like change things mid-month, there is
anytime really.
Yeah, every EVAR has an instance of EVAR. That is where it is explicitly set. So if you are trying to transition from bad data to good data where, you know, it actually makes sense, that's where you might want to change it from, like, you know, here's all the page views that have these, but instance of, here is where it is explicitly set. And basically get them used to that and then say, yeah. And that's the other thing that is nice about like the EVAR versus instance of EVAR, where I will actually use something like, well, here is where the value was set. Here's all the pages that were seen after it, like my promos. So here's all the direct promotion clicks, internal promotions. Here's all the pages that were driven by it. And then I can actually do a pages that were driven by said promotion.
Yeah. Nice. Nice.
Yeah, I think I need to set it. I need to set it a little bit ago, but yeah, I pretty much only use unspecified, like within my team, because they're sometimes super helpful, right? I just want to know everything that, without having to add everything up. I just want to know all the visits or hits that do have a value, and subtracting the unspecified from the total is an easy way to get that. But yeah, otherwise we explain that to people, but if it's external facing, it's usually excluded by default. So Anita, does CJA have the same concept?
Yes, it does. They call it no value. And the nice thing about CJA is that you can actually turn it off in certain dimensions. So like if you want to, so that it doesn't show at all by default, or you can change the name of it. So like, I don't know, if you have an example, you could just call it, Bob or everything else, or ignore this please, or something, but that's just sort of a silly example. But yeah, you can change the name of the value. You can change whether or not the value is included in your calculations. You can just have it not display at all, which is really nice. So, but I do use it a lot for troubleshooting. I feel like I need it for a lot of things, so I never turn it off. But but it's still technically there.
Yeah, that would be nice to be able to, for certain items, to actually be like on an internal campaign to say no campaign or something that
right.
Because business always gets confused when they see unspecified. They're like, oh my God, why do we have so much unspecified? I'm like, because it's direct. It's fine. It's good. It's good. I wish I could literally just rewrite it to direct, which is something I could do with CJA. But
yes, that's true. Yeah.
Usually I just put a big note at the top of the report that only half the people read that says unspecified means no campaign.
Well, that's why they pay us the big bucks, right? All right.
Well, let's see. That was the end of our pre-submitted questions. Does anyone else have any questions in the chat they want to drop in? Happy to answer those.
Don't be shy. Either that or we just cured a bunch of insomnia for people. Well, I'm just going to go check Experience League and see if anything came up recently. Well, we got a couple of CJA questions. Anita, this might be more up your alley. There's one here about data ingestion for CJA. Does anyone have any clarifying info on the ingestion limit entitlement for CJA packages? Does ingestion include events that were added then deleted in both CJA connections, but also in AEP data lake? Example, file reinstatements. I understand the rolling window only affects usage, not actual ingestion. What else does ingestion include? Or is that just let's just pass on that one? Anita, are you talking because you were muted?
I'm talking to myself again. No, I have more questions on that. I'm not sure I have the information I would need to answer that one on the surface. So the suggestion, I mean, I'm not sure what they mean by ingestion, but anything that you pull in, like, if you're just connecting it to a table or whatever, you're going to get everything that's in the table as long as you have those fields, set up in your schema. So that's, it depends on a lot of things, but yeah, I'm not sure I fully understand the question. So I'm not going to pretend I know.
Yeah, it was a little vague as I started reading it, and I'm like, And then the other one, and again, this is probably going to apply a little bit to, also to Adobe Analytics. Is the data preview in the segment builder in CJA an estimate, or is it an accurate count of people? Please see screenshot. And I'm just going to pull up the screenshot right now.
Isn't that like last 90 days or something? Or is it 30?
I think it's 90 days on Adobe Analytics, and I believe it is real data, but you also have to be careful about, is your panel constrained by a segment? Because anything that's in the segment preview is only going to be what the segment preview is building, and not apply any of the other segments that are applied in your tables. So those numbers may not match. You also have to make sure that you are in the correct reporting suite. So your workspace report may be in your production view, but your segment builder, because you may have like multi suite going on in all the various panels, may be showing you your QA one. And I believe the same exists for like which is it what's it called in CJA? Is it your data view or
data view?
Yeah, so you need to make sure you're in the correct data view for the preview to actually be accurate. The segment may work perfectly fine in data view A and suite A and be used in data view B and suite B, but the numbers may not match because you're looking at completely different sets of data. But as we're seeing, those numbers are accurate.
Yeah. That's an interesting question. I don't ignore the preview. I use it quite a bit to determine if my segment has data or not, but I don't pay a lot of attention to the values, so that it never occurred to me that they would be like, but that's really good guidelines to look for.
Yeah, I mean, definitely I use the preview more from a perspective of, is this looking kind of realistic? Like, are these numbers I'm expecting?
Right.
But I mean, it's still going to be using API calls. It's still going to be doing those APIs and doing the calculation. Right. I really can't see it being sampled data.
No, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Very cool. Right. What else? Got 4 minutes.
Last chance.
We can probably wrap it up. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, fellow champions, and Josh. This will be recorded and available on the user group link. We'll have a link. And if we do these, so if you found this helpful, feel free to join us next month. There'll be an invite out in a few weeks. We'd love pre-submitted questions that give us more time to think about them, so please do that. Feel free to reach out to any of us on LinkedIn or Experience League. And have a good afternoon, everybody.
Thanks so much. Bye, all.